Hello and welcome to Student Success Strategies, a fall 2022 workshop offered by the Student Success Center at Alpena Community College. The agenda for today is some welcomes and introductions, a little bit of an overview about today's format, and then we'll dive into our student success strategies, which when this was presented live involved some brainstorming and discussion. And then we've got some wrap-up questions, upcoming workshops, and a survey for you to complete, even if you're attending via watching the recording. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Christy Gibson. I am the Student Success Center technician, and I coordinate workshops for ACC students each semester to help you be successful in your classes so that you can move on to careers and other institutions and achieve your professional goals. So today's workshop is about student success strategies, and the format when we delivered this live a few weeks ago was that we would look at a strategy and I'd have the attendees brainstorm, and then we'd look at some ideas and see what we got and what we missed and kind of have folks decide which would be the best for their specific situations. So for you listening at home or from wherever you are attending, I'll encourage you to pause and do some brainstorming of your own and think about how you may or may not be using some of these strategies. And then we'll move on and look at some of the ideas. So without anything else, let's get started. So the 7 success strategies that we're going to talk about today are establishing goals, attending class regularly, managing your time wisely, taking organized lecture notes, reading to increase understanding, thinking about your exams as being something you start preparing for from day one, and regarding test taking as an opportunity. So start to think about these because we're going to do a deep dive into each one. So success strategy number 1, establish goals. So here's that blank screen I promised you. So what I'd recommend is that you pause the video and think about, why is this important? Do you have goals? Why or why not? If not, how might they help you? So pause and then we will move on to the next slide when you're ready. So one of the things when folks talk about goals, there is an acronym SMART, establishing SMART goals. And this means goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So, don't worry about getting all of these things if you're establishing a goal, but I think looking at some of these components might help you to set goals for yourself that are more tangible. So instead of saying like, oh, I want to do well in all of my classes, well, what does that specifically mean? Does doing well mean a C for you? Does it mean straight A's? Does it mean only in the courses of your program, but not your general ed? Like, what exactly do you mean by that? And the measurable piece is, how are you going to measure it? Is it going to be measured by the amount of time you choose to study each week? Is it going to be measured by the grades you get on papers and exams and so on? Is it achievable? Which means really, is it realistic? If you're somebody who's working full time and you have a few kids and you've got other responsibilities in the community, is it also achievable to think that you're going to get 100% on every single thing you turn in? Maybe, maybe not. So keep that in mind. You want your goals to be realistic. You want to feel like you're successful and able to reach them. Relevant. A lot of times we establish goals for ourselves, but really they're not meaningful to us. So the relevance piece is what connects it to motivation. If it's relevant to you and your career, and it's important to you personally or professionally, to your family, that may motivate you more to work toward that goal. And then time-bound means what it sounds like, which is that there is a limit, that you're going to achieve X by Y date. I'm going to get my grades all up to a B or better by November 15th. So try to think in terms of your goals using these variables. Another great tip is to write your goals down versus just keeping them in your mind. If you write them down, they're tangible. You can make sure that they've got some of these elements of SMART goals, and they're not just something in your head that you kind of pay attention to sometimes and not other times. So um, writing them down is helpful. And that's tied to something we call priming your environment. So that could be posting your goals where you're going to see them daily. Maybe you've got some post-it notes. You could put one on your computer or on your bedroom or bathroom mirror, so that you see it every day and you're reminded of why it is you're doing what you're doing, what it is you're trying to achieve. That may help you to prioritize. It may help you to stay focused, and so on. And then, sometimes we set goals for ourselves that end up not being realistic or achievable, or things come up in our lives. We get sick, we have other challenges, and we need to readjust or course correct. So, don't hesitate to look at your goals and adjust them as needed. And then finally, when you accomplish a goal, or if you've got a series of steps that are part of a goal, reward yourself. And that can be something that's meaningful to you, whether it's, letting yourself watch a movie you've been waiting to see, or visit with a friend, or listen to music, or, go out of town for the weekend, whatever it happens to be sure to reward yourself for your efforts. Success strategy number 2 is attending class regularly. This probably seems obvious, but I know we don't all do this. So why don't you pause and think about why this really matters? And when you're ready, come back to the recording. So here are a number of reasons. One, research has shown that many students learn best through active participation in class discussions. So you're not just reading the material or listening to lectures, but you're engaging with other people, which helps to solidify that information, creates new neural pathways in your brain. For some of us, we need to hear the information 3, 4, 5 times before it actually sticks. And sometimes reading it, hearing it, engaging with it, all those different ways of it kind of hitting our senses can really help us to understand better. The second one here, your textbook is supplemental to the classroom experience. It's not a substitute. So regularly attending lectures, hearing your instructor's interpretations or additional information and context can really help to solidify that learning as well. And then on the interpersonal or social side of things, getting to know your classmates can generate opportunities for you to engage in study groups, note sharing. If you're out sick, you know people that you can get notes from, find out what you missed, and also to being successful on group projects. The better you know people, the better you're going to be able to work together. And then finally, by attending class, you're able to get to know your instructor a little better. They know who you are. You can get your questions answered from the readings and from the lectures. So developing that relationship with your instructors is really important, not just in the short term for the class, but long term as well. If you've got instructors that you've connected with and they know you, they know what your goals are, they know what your strengths are, they may be able to point you in the direction of jobs or next steps in your education, or people that would be really helpful for you to network with or talk with. So establishing those relationships is really crucial. Okay, success strategy number 3, managing your time wisely. This is a big one. We're going to do a whole workshop on this in November of 2022. But just to get us started, why don't you take some time to think about how well you think you're doing with time management? And then when you're ready, come back and join the video recording. So I think we've got 2 slides here, a little bit disorganized, but a lot of ideas related to time management. The first one is avoiding marathon study sessions. Sometimes we think, oh my gosh, I'm going to spend all Saturday afternoon And, sitting and trying to study for 4 hours straight could be exhausting, and at some point, it's not productive. So try to use blocks of time. You can gauge for yourself what that length of time is where you're able to focus. But for a lot of people, a 1 hour block of really focused time followed by a 10-minute break is a good way to do that. And also getting to know yourself. Self-awareness is key here. Are you a morning person? Most of us tend to do better when we're wide awake and daylight hours, but there are other people who are night owls and get a second wind after dinner and do their best work in the, wee hours of the morning. So know yourself, know when it's important and best for you to do the things that are hardest for you, maybe even the things that are most boring for you. Use them when your energy levels are at their peak. Another good idea at the start of semester, or even as you're doing that course correcting, is really determining how much time do you need for each class you're taking. In general, the idea is that for each hour of class that you have in person, allocating 2 hours outside of class each week. So for a 3 credit hour class, that would be 6 hours of outside work per week. So if you're taking a full load of classes, this becomes more than a 40-hour week between your class and your study time. So being aware of that and knowing how much time and making the time on your calendar and prioritizing that is important. A couple of tips just related to class time. Taking notes is important, and if you can add a little time right at the end of a class to edit and review your notes, that can be helpful. It can help to solidify the learning right there in real time and maybe even draw your attention to some pieces that you didn't quite catch that you might want to follow up with your instructor or with classmates for clarification. And then similarly, right before you go to class, take some time to review the notes from the previous lecture and review your notes that you've taken from the reading so that you've got that foundation set for the next lecture you're going to attend. And another idea here, which is tied to one of our other tips of thinking about your final exams from day one, you want to be continuously reviewing your previous material, not just the new material, so that you continue to build your knowledge and reinforce it. Another slide here with managing your time, learning to say no to activities that prevent you from achieving your goals. This is a tough one, but there is a saying that is for everything you say yes to, you need to say no to something else. We can't keep saying yes, 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 and filling our days and our calendars with commitments. At some point, it's going to, there's no time left. So make sure that as you're taking on new responsibilities and maybe even transitioning to being a student, that you look at the rest of your life and responsibilities and figure out what are those things that you're going to need to stop doing, what are those things you're going to need to ask for help with, and that type of thing. So ties right into that next one. You cannot do everything yourself. So learning to delegate, learning to ask for help is really important if you're going to have the time you need to be successful in your classes. With all that said, you do need to schedule time for yourself. No guilt allowed. You need to be able to recharge, do the things you like to do, have some downtime. So make sure that you are scheduling that time for yourself and that you're also taking the breaks that we've talked about already. And then you probably heard this from all the wise elders in your life, but having a foundation of well-balanced meals, getting your sleep, getting your exercise, that's really the foundation for you to be at your best self physically and mentally before you jump into the rigor of your classes. So do take care of yourself. And then finally, this tip is to start well in advance of due dates. And if you're finding that you're struggling with time management or you're still, barely making deadlines, maybe double the amount of time that you think something might take you until you really get a sense of how long it takes you to do a project or write a paper with all the steps involved. Our next strategy is to take organized lecture notes. So take a minute to think about that for yourself and come back to the recording. So some of this might seem like common sense, but let's run through these anyway. Of course, you want to be sure that you're dating and identifying each set of notes. If you've got a number of classes and labs, you don't want to get your notes mixed up. So do that. Don't try to take word for word notes. I know this is something that I do, and it's just not possible. So you have to come up with a system for yourself to, kind of either make an outline, pick high level themes. If you've done the reading and you've attended previous classes, you probably know what the structure, what the theme for the lecture is. So try to summarize your instructor's emphasized points, and of course any diagrams or examples you're going to want to jot down. But when you're taking notes, make sure it makes sense to you. Use your own words. But if there are scientific words or formulas or things that you need to know, be sure to jot those down. And of course, leaving some space in your notes for clarification later is important. Maybe when you do that review after class, you realize you didn't quite understand something. You want to get a little more information. So make sure you've got space for that kind of follow-up. And if you develop your own shorthand, make sure it's something that you're going to recognize later. Again, I've taken notes in the past, even taken a phone message, and later can't even read my own handwriting or don't know what the little short word I put actually means. So be careful about that one. Make sure that you understand what it is you're writing down. And again, if you're reviewing your notes as quickly after class as you can, you'll catch those things and it'll still be in mind. But if you're looking at something days or weeks later, it may not make sense to you. So that's a really good habit to get into. And then again, we mentioned this one already, but reviewing and editing your notes immediately after class, looking at things you might want clarification on. All right, on to success strategy number 5. This one is reading to increase understanding. So this is when your instructor's given you some journal articles or books to read. How can you be most effective? So we've got 2 slides here. The first one is really a strategy about previewing the material before you get started. So before you dive right into the book or the article, take a look, if it's a book, at the preface, at the table of contents, the introduction, maybe there's a foreword. Find out how the information in the book is organized. What are the main topics? I like to read the back cover. And before you begin reading, preview the chapter, look at section titles, graphics. If there's questions at the end of the chapter, take a look at those. Look at the supplemental information in the back of the book. That'll really kind of lay the groundwork for you of what is it I'm about to read, what is the author's intention, what's going to be covered, so that you can anticipate that as you're reading. And then slide 2 here, as you're reading, obviously this is a common sense one, but read your assignment slowly and carefully. And as you're reading, try to make connections. And by this, I mean connections to things you already know about the topic, maybe from your studies or from your real life, from previous lectures, from other classes. Build on the knowledge you have. That'll help things to make more sense to you within a broader context. If you're somebody who likes to underline or highlight or put notes in the book, don't hesitate to do that. Underlining and highlighting the important information, not everything. I've been guilty of looking back at pages and seeing I've highlighted almost every word. That's not really helpful. So be sure that you're just going for those key points. If you can write in the margin of the article or the book to summarize in a word or 2 or a phrase what the main theme was, that'll make it easier if you later want to go through and kind of scan the article to remind yourself what it meant when you're getting ready for a test or to write a paper where that's going to be a resource. Making up fact sheets or key term sheets is helpful when you're getting ready to study. You don't want to have to reread every book and article. So create tools for yourself to be able to quickly go back and review. And finally, making a list of questions or additional information that you'll need. Maybe doing your own research, going to the library, looking on Google, asking instructors, but what were you left wondering about, curious about, or confused about after you've completed the reading? Step number 6, or sorry, strategy number 6, we've touched on this one a little bit, but the idea that exam preparation begins on day 1. What ideas do you have here? Okay, so reviewing, we've talked about this one already, but reviewing your lecture notes immediately after each class, working with a study group throughout the semester is a great way to share ideas. You could all be in the same classroom and everybody hears something different based on their own life experience and background, previous knowledge. So being able to bounce ideas off and share with other people who are in your class can be a really effective way to learn the material and also to get to know people who have the same interests that you do. After reviewing your notes, think about the topics that were presented and write down a list of the most important points of your lectures. And then at least 1 week before the exam, you will want to go back through all of your lecture notes and the notes that you've taken from textbooks and articles. Maybe look at your old assignments and quizzes and put together a study plan for yourself. Create some tools that you can use to synthesize everything you've learned and really focus your studies for the exam. And then you might want to try to give yourself a practice exam. That might help to build your confidence and make you feel more comfortable when it comes time for the exam itself. Our final strategy today is regarding test taking as an opportunity. This is kind of an odd heading, but really this is more strategies for when you're taking a test, how to approach it. So think about that and we'll hop on to the next slide. So, of course, everything we've just talked about is the foundation for this first one, being prepared. So be prepared for the test. Read all the instructions. I know that seems really basic, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard students say, oh my gosh, I didn't read the instructions carefully. I didn't give the instructor what they wanted. I knew the material. So be sure to read the instructions. Taking some time to preview the test, just like we talked about with the reading materials, that'll give you a sense of what is on this test, how many questions, how many points, how much time do I think I'm going to need for each of these. Do any of them look like they're going to be a challenge for me? Maybe that there's something that's going to be more difficult for you than other questions. Make note of that. Given that most tests have a time limit, don't spend too much time on any one question. And, if there's one that you can't quickly answer, somehow flag it and return to it later if you have time. And then finally, this might be easier said than done, but try to stay calm. I know we all get a little bit anxious and stressed, little butterflies in our stomach when we have tests, but a little of that is normal. That adrenaline is what gets you going and helps you to focus and face the challenge in front of you. So just, understand that a little bit of anxiety is normal and to be expected, and it may actually be what helps you to get through the test. If you're somebody where it's more severe than that and you want some strategies on test taking, we're going to be doing a workshop later this semester on that topic as well. So we're near the end of the presentation. Goes a little quicker when it's not in person, but just some key points, kind of high-level takeaways from what we talked about today. We've got a number of ways to ensure your academic success. The first one is to stay positive. Believing that you're going to succeed is an important part of the process. So have faith in yourself, have confidence, and know that there's going to be blips along the way. You sometimes might take a couple step forward and then a step back, but that's all part of the process. Set goals for yourself. We talked about this, knowing what it is you want to accomplish and having that plan to get there, organizing your time well, chunking your assignments, adapting as necessary, all are key steps to good goal setting. Practicing self-awareness. This is really knowing yourself. What are your strengths? What are your growth areas? And in each class, you're going to have things that you do and know well and others that are more of a challenge for you. So be aware of that. And, maybe that means you adjust the time you study for certain things. Maybe that means you get a tutor or really rely on your study group to help fill in the gaps for you or meet your instructor. So be aware of where you have strengths and where it is you need to fill in some gaps. Be self-disciplined. So again, this is staying on track, managing your time, completing your work on time. All of that really matters. And then this is a repeat from earlier, but establishing that healthy foundation, getting enough sleep, exercising regularly, making healthy food choices. That's all foundational to your success and to your outlook, to your attitude, to your mindset, that positivity we talked about at the top of the slide. So when we did the live session, I asked everyone to share what their key takeaways were from today's workshop. Were there new ideas that jumped out at you as being things that you'd want to try, that you think would really help you with things that you're struggling with? Jot those down and think about what's one new action that you could take as a result of the workshop in the coming week. Okay, so depending on when you're watching this recording, this may or may not be useful and relevant information. Actually, the basics of MLA has already taken place at the time of this recording, but we will be posting a recording as well. So if that's something you're interested in for your workshops, please look for the recording on the same webpage where you are viewing this workshop. And coming up October 31st and November 2nd, we have What Class Should I Take Next? This will be facilitated by our faculty advisor, Jewel Lancaster, and it'll really walk you through the self-service section of my ACC so that you are able to select your classes and get registered for spring 2023. Again, just a reminder, if you would prefer to attend these live, for fall 2022, we offer these workshops live on Mondays at 1, Wednesdays at 10 in Van Laer 123, and the Oscoda campus, room 301, joins us via WebEx. And if you prefer to join from your home or some other comfortable location, there is WebEx available for all attendees. And I do send out reminders every week, so watch your ACC email for that. And if I can help you any further with this topic or others, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and you can see my email there at the end of the page. And finally, we would love your feedback, whether you've attended live or you're watching a recording. If you could scan the QR code or follow that little URL, tiny URL, I think it's called, and hop over to my survey. I've got some quick questions for you to answer. This helps us to continuously improve the workshops that we offer. And again, you've got my contact information if I can help you in any way. Thanks for your attention, and we look forward to seeing you at other Student Success Center activities. Thank you.